there's so many different tools that you are utilizing. I feel like you just threw
Right.
out like a plethora, like a
Yeah.
cloud. And I'm hoping that anybody who was listening is like, oh, I could do that.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
I could do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Oh, I could do that. I could do that one. Peace and light, family. I hope that you are well. It is the Queen Poe, and I am here with my sister Queen. Cece, introduce yourself, girl.
Hello, hello, world. My name is Sierra, aka Cece. I know Queen Poe. I've known her for how long now? How long has it been?
Ciao.
I
I
feel like
think
it's almost 10 years.
yeah,
Almost.
it's
We
about 10
get
years because we
there.
met in 2011, I believe.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, we just hit 10 years.
yeah, we
Okay,
we 30. I'm
okay.
31.
I'm 31. So we up there, but it has been a joy being Queen Poe's sister. I'm so grateful that we had an opportunity to connect at the University by the Sea, Savannah State. We get anywhere from there.
We met at Savannah State University. So HBCU, products of HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
It's been an amazing journey. And one thing that we bonded on very, very early was mental health. And it is Mental Health Awareness Month. And me and Sierra, we was texting and talking about mental health and where we were in mental health and what has been going on in mental health, in our mental health journey. And, she shared some things. And I said, girl, do you want to talk about this publicly? I would love to have you on my channel. And she said, of course, of course. So here we are. My intentions for this video is to discuss mental health for us. Mental health as human beings, mental health as Black folks, mental health as Black women, and really just let our people know that it is possible to get help. You can get help. We can get help. It is possible. So we're going to talk about the different types of help, our relationship with mental health, things that we've personally been through with mental health, and all that good stuff. Cece, do you want to share what your intentions are?
I share the same intentions, just giving people hope, because I know when I was younger or when I just needed some advice, that's not really what I was getting. So I think we all have an opportunity in this generation to share our stories in a more positive light and give that positive feedback and encouragement to others. And definitely on your platform, I think this is the best way to do that.
Thank you, girl. Y'all gonna see me pulling on my dress top a lot because I ain't got no bra on and these boobies is hangling and dangling. And I want to make sure don't nothing pop out. So Cece, when in childhood, what was the first moment that you became aware of mental health? That it's like a thing. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
clearly everybody mind ain't the same. When did you
Right.
first become aware of that?
I would say when I was young, I think my mom told me from like maybe 9 months to about almost 2 years old, I lived with my grandparents. So I lived with my grandparents for a long time. I know my mom told me she was working, she had a lot going on being a single mother, and my grandparents took up that opportunity to take care of me. So I don't remember necessarily at that young of an age, but from that time until my mom actually took on back that role of taking care of me, I used to go to my grandparents' house in the summers all the time, and I would here and there notice my grandmother and my grandfather arguing, and my grandmother always mentioning something about my grandfather doing something and him being completely oblivious to, like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Who is that person? What do you mean? It was like a constant. I just constantly knew that he just didn't know what she was talking about. So I feel like that might have been the first time where I saw something was going on. And not to say like my grandfather was innocent, but I just know that he was just so oblivious to it. And I got an opportunity just to get to know him more, to know that what she was saying wasn't true. And it could be something that was something that was stemming from her mental. So I don't know if what she was experiencing at that time, but that's like really when I first started to notice something within my family. And then my mom, um, when I would be with her, just like after a long day, my mom told me get out her face, don't say nothing to me. Why'd you touch this? Why'd you do that? Why is this like this type of thing? Just basically taking her anger out on me in a sense,
Mm.
but now also realizing that she had a lot going on. There was a lot that she was dealing with. So seeing that in my home and not really understanding how to deal with pressure and stress, that's a form of mental health. When you're stressed out, you could take it out on somebody that you love or care about, or you don't know how to manage it because you never seen anybody else do it. Like, you just know that you're supposed to go to work, you're supposed to do what you need to do. Yeah, you don't take time for yourself, so then you feel overwhelmed. So those are probably the most two times that I feel like I've seen it in my childhood. And then just overall, maybe amongst family members or friends, just seeing how they've managed how they manage and how they haven't managed their mental health.
Mm. Okay, so the interesting thing that what I'm hearing is it seems like, there was things that was happening and you were able to understand, like, okay, clearly mentally something is going on,
Yeah,
but nobody ever put a label
right.
on, okay, grandma has this
Mm-hmm.
mental health thing going on, so this is why. Were
Right.
there any labels floating around?
No, there wasn't. I feel like I've never heard anybody say somebody was experiencing some form of depression or anxiety. Those words weren't really thrown around. And even now in my adulthood, mentioning therapy or um, depression to a family member, it's kind of like, whoa, what's wrong with you? Why do you need depression? What? You don't go walk, go take a walk, go get something to eat. You all right. You all right. Like, no, I'm trying
Yeah,
to tell you that I'm not. And it's okay that I'm not okay. But yeah.
I like that. It's okay that I'm not okay.
Mhm.
I remember for me growing up, I became very aware of mental health at a young age, but not really knowing any details, like how did we get here? What happened? My
Mhm.
earliest memory, of course, you know, I had a great uncle who they would say, Uncle such and such is a little touched,
Mhm.
and he when you meet Uncle such and such, he gonna say this or he gonna do this. He ain't all the way there. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like Aunt such and such, she be hearing voices and stuff. She said she be talking to
Mhm.
spirits. I think she a little touched, you know.
A
So
little
it's like
touch.
things, just a little touch, and
Mhm.
it's things like that that I was like, okay, so a little touched. And being a little touched in the Black community could be in a couple things. It could be a
Right.
behavioral issue, it could be a cognitive development issue, or
Exactly.
it could be a mental health issue.
Right.
Um, but still, being young, didn't really know what that was.
Mhm.
Then I remember I had to be maybe like 5 years old. Um, I had a play auntie, a close family friend, a play auntie who she had 4 kids and she was in a relationship, and all this stuff in her relationship went downhill, and she had a mental break. And
Mhm.
as an adult, I know that it was a mental break, but basically, she tried to set the house on fire with all the kids in
Mhm.
it, and she was committed to a mental hospital.
Mhm.
And I remember, we all had to go, we all was staying at my mom's house, and it was, a 2-bedroom apartment. My auntie had 4 kids, my mama had two, six
Mhm.
kids, my mother and father, 2 adults in a 2-bedroom apartment, and it just being like, whoa, like, and everybody was looking out for each other. And we just knew that she tried to set the house on fire with all the kids in it, and that
Wow.
she was in a mental hospital. That's it, because they had no problem saying that, like, she in a mental hospital. So that was my first, like, ding ding ding. So there's hospitals for mental stuff,
Mhm.
like for when people's mind don't be right. So there's a hospital for that.
Mhm.
And I remember when she came home, and that was my first time being aware of, like, oh wow, people can, like, have breakdowns that cause them to want to do things to themselves and to hurt other people. That's
Mhm.
when I first became aware of that. But still, again, no label was placed on it.
Mhm.
No label was placed on what happened or the afterward. It was just like, this was just a moment and we move on, as
Right.
Black folks often do, and
Mhm.
literally moved. So they placed her, they fixed up the apartment, placed her back in the same apartment, and there was a big burn hole in the middle of the floor in the projects. They got like the concrete floors,
Yeah.
a big burn mark in the middle of the floor where she had set everything on fire in the middle of the floor. And we just lived with that reminder that this thing had happened. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Yeah. So that was like the the moment that I was like, okay, this is something that's going on. And then growing older, and having experiences with my mother, and knowing that like the way often like her reactions to and the way she perceived the world, and perceived experiences was quite different from other mothers. Um, so that was like a mental health moment. And then her first moment of going into the mental hospital and being officially diagnosed. So I didn't know anything about like labels and being people going into the mental hospital and leaving with a diagnosis and receiving medication and things like that until I was about 14 years old, and my own mother was, you know, placed in a mental hospital, received a diagnosis, and given medication. That was the first time that I became aware that like, okay, mental health is a thing and it needs to be taken care of, because it can not only affect you, but then affect the people around you. So going from being a kid and like they a little touched to, okay, there's a mental health hospital, and when you do things like this, you go to the mental health hospital, to like, oh, this is what happens in the mental health hospital,
right.
and this is what they experience, and this is the result. You know, that was my first realization. So for you in childhood, you know, hearing about mental health and going through, you know, having the experiences that you experienced, how did that shape your perception of mental health moving into adulthood?
That is a great question, because that's what I reflect on now that I'm actually treating and trying to find ways to better my mental health. So when I was growing up, since it wasn't mentioned much at all, really, dealing with my different various mental health challenges, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know what I was feeling. If I was having a panic attack, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just overwhelmed. I need to go lay down, take a rest, or something like that. So not until in the last few years, I've realized that it's okay to speak with someone. It's okay to get extra help. It's okay to reach out, because growing up, I didn't see it. Not to say maybe that couldn't have been a solution, but I didn't see anyone else getting that type of help. So I didn't know that was a solution that I could look into, until now as I'm an adult.
Moving into being an adult and realizing that, okay, there are solutions and there are things that I can do. What was your first experience with like, okay, I need to take care of my mental health because I need some mental health support. What was your
Yeah.
first personal experience with that?
I would say, well, during the pandemic, I started receiving therapy, because when I realized that I was actually depressed is when I started to say to myself, yeah, this is not good. Like I'm, turning off my alarm in the morning and laying in bed for like 45 minutes just staring at the wall because I don't want to get up. Or I'm struggling to, even once I get up, I'm still struggling to get myself ready. Or once I sit in the car and pull out the driveway, I'm still like, I really don't even want to deal with the day. I don't even want to go to work. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to be around anybody. And realizing for myself that that just didn't feel normal to me, as someone that likes to be, I like to have moments of being social, and I like to be around people. When I noticed that I want to isolate myself more, that's when I said, okay, I think I need to look into ways that I can better help myself. So the moment when I really felt like I needed more help is when last year, when I really felt like I was at that point of, yeah, this is really bad for me. It felt really bad for me that I had to reach out to a friend and let them know how I was feeling. Like I'm scared for myself at this point, that nothing anyone could really say to me right now will make me feel better. So for her,
Okay, wait. Because we just unpacked a lot right there. That I think is very important, because again, going back to our intentions for this video, it's to, bring awareness to mental health and discuss like when we first became aware of mental health and our own experiences with our mental health. So you just really discussed a lot, because you touched on what were some of your signs and symptoms that you needed mental health support. So if you don't mind, can you restate for yourself some of those signs and symptoms that, okay, I need some extra support?
Yeah, of course. So when like I mentioned about just me not wanting to get up in the morning, that was just something that I noticed. Well, I know a lot of people say we all have struggles with getting up in the morning. Not everybody's a morning person. But this is like, say if I have to be at work at 9, I get up at 8. I don't get out the bed until about 8:30, 8:35. I still got about maybe a good couple of minutes to get ready and get to work. Like I would always just push it to the last minute and eventually being late to work, but having the knowledge of like, okay, well, I know that my supervisor or my manager can give me some grace on a couple of minutes, but knowing that I could have gotten up a little bit earlier, I could have prepared myself for the day, but me not wanting to even think about the day, not even wanting to face whatever challenges may come with the day. Those are the things that I started to notice. And then even after I would get up, go to work, or even on days if I'm not working, this is the weekend when I'm not working, I'm still in the bed until like maybe 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm telling myself, oh, I'm going to get up, I'm going to clean the house, I'm going to go do this, I'm going to run some errands. And I'm still just like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to see anybody. My phone's on do not disturb. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to answer any calls. When people are asking me how I'm doing, I'm not being honest. I'm just saying, oh, I'm good, exclamation point. How are you? That's not even how I'm really feeling. So noticing that as well. And then just no excitement. Like I had no excitement about anything. Like if it was my birthday coming up, I just knew for a fact I was not excited because I was like, okay, I'm getting a year older. All right, well, and then I'm also reflecting on different things in my life where I want to be, what I want to already have. And that's also affecting how I'm feeling. Like if I'm not in the career that I thought I would be in, or experiencing this, whatever relationship or whatever timeline I had for myself, that was also a reminder. So holidays can be a sense of where I'm noticing how I'm feeling, like when Mother's Day comes around, or when Thanksgiving or Christmas or these different holidays come around and everyone's with somebody and I'm still stepping back and wanting to be isolated. I still just don't want to be around anybody. Like nothing is bringing me any form of joy at all.
That's excellent. That's excellent.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important to differentiate, because especially in the beginning when you talked about like not wanting to get up and get out of bed for work, because I think especially in the Black community and people as a whole, oftentimes what we do is we like, oh, this is normal. We normalize signs and symptoms. It's a lot. we having a serious discussion.
Right.
But we normalize signs and symptoms, we normalize these things and we say, okay, well, I don't want to get out of bed in the morning, but who wants to go to work? Nobody wants to go to work. Everybody deals with this. Well, I don't really feel like talking on the phone, but nobody talk on the phone in 2022. Everybody texts. Like we normalize these things. And I love that you touched on the difference between like knowing that this is more than just wanting to procrastinate. This is not just usual procrastination. I genuinely, nothing is bringing me joy. I don't want to be around people. I don't want to talk on the phone. And when I am on the phone, I don't want to share how I actually feel. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't even want to think about any challenges or anything that may come up during the day. And this is consistent.
Yeah.
This is consistent, like consistently feeling this way. I think that's important to touch on. And also, I love that you spoke on, again, not wanting to tell people how you really feel. When you would talk on the phone and it's like, hey, how you doing, girl? What's going on? And we do the, I'm fine. What's up with you? When we turn the tables. How you doing?
Exactly. How you doing?
What made you feel, or what caused you to feel like you don't want to tell anybody what's really going on?
I feel like when I did have moments of where I was willing to share, maybe with a family member or with a friend, their reaction wasn't what I expected. Like they weren't necessarily unsupportive, but they weren't really like, oh, I didn't know, tell me more about it. It was kind of just like, ooh, you feeling like that? Why? I mean, you got this going on, you got that going on. Like it was kind of just, in a sense, I guess gaslighting, if that's the word that I want to use, but not really taking in consideration for what I'm saying. Like not even giving me any more support. So making me feel even worse about how I already feel. So that's the reason why, like, most of the time people don't really share, because people don't really know how to react to it sometimes. It's just like, you look at everything on the outside. It's like, well, how could you be depressed if you got this, you got that? Like, what could make you depressed? If you got money, you shouldn't be depressed. Like, these are things that people look to and try to figure out why you're feeling that way, instead of just asking, well, why do you feel that way? Like, what's going on? What's making you, what would you say is making you feel like this? Like, talking it out. So just like thinking that I really didn't have anybody that I could really talk about what I was going through with, without me feeling like, okay, I'm feeling like I'm getting judged. They may not be judging me, but that's how I feel. Like, in my mind, I'm telling myself all these different things, like, girl, don't nobody care. You know, it's a panorama going on right now. Like, nobody cares that you are feeling like this. A lot of people are feeling like this. So that's another thing too. Like, people, like you said about getting up in the morning, a lot of people don't want to go to work. A lot of people are experiencing depression. So it's kind of like, well, why do you want to dwell on what you have going on while other people are going through something worse?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For me as well, my first moments of becoming aware that, okay, I have mental health that I need to deal with. I like growing up, for me, I was always a very driven person, always a very like go getter, hustler. Like, if I set my mind on something, I was going to get it. Super focused. Which has its pros and has its cons, because I would be willing to sacrifice my wellness in order to achieve that goal. And I'm talking about wellness as far as like, I've talked about this before, how I have like an unhealthy level of discipline in some areas, and a lot of areas where even like if I would be writing a paper in college, right, I would tell myself like, you cannot go to the bathroom, you cannot eat or drink anything until you finish at least a page and a half. And like that level of like,
oh girl, I was asleep.
Like, you know, like, girl, drink some water. What
are you talking about? Something, get a snack.
Why are you placing these unnecessary like thresholds on yourself? And I would do that with everything. Like, you cannot, like sleep is a reward, water is a reward, this is a reward. You don't deserve this if you don't achieve this, you know. And I would place this on myself, you know. And the moment I realized that that was an issue wasn't until after college. And I was working full time, I was teaching full time, and I was in grad school full time. And I was trying to maintain a relationship at the time, and everything. Like, I remember laying in bed one day and I realized exactly how physically and mentally exhausted I was. I was exhausted. Like, there's no other way I could describe it. I was exhausted because I didn't realize how long I just had my head down and was running the race. Tunnel vision, running the race, running the race, running the race. And I was so tired. And that was my first moment of realizing, like, girl, if you don't want this to become a bigger issue, you need to take better care of your physical health, of your mental health. At that time, I had went all the way up to my highest weight was 396 pounds. 396 pounds. I was almost 400 pounds. And you know, I was just going and eating fast food on, grabbing a bacon, egg, and cheese, not a bacon, egg, and cheese, egg and cheese on the way to work. And for lunch, I'm going to run to the nearest fast food or having something delivered at dinner before I go to grad class. I'm grabbing a slice of pizza, running to grad school, coming home and doing it all again the next day, because I was working in Harlem, living in Brooklyn, 2-hour commute. Like, it was a lot going on. Yeah, I was coming home at 11, 12 o'clock and waking up at 4 a.m., sometimes even later. Yeah, like coming home 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes and waking up at 4 a.m. and doing this for a long time. And I was wearing myself down. And I realized, like, mentally, I wasn't enjoying life. Mentally, I was drained. Physically, I was drained. I wasn't happy. I remember, like, you know, classes being done and like not even realizing that this is a break. I'm waiting for the next thing to come, not enjoying moments of like, okay, this is some downtime, take a rest. I'm filling my schedule. So that was a sign for me, was feeling exhausted, but still filling my schedule, finding something else, staying busy, which is often a way that we unhealthily cope, right? So that's like, staying busy is an unhealthy coping mechanism to hide from issues and thoughts that may be going on, hide from not wanting to heal certain things and not wanting to do the inner work. So this is like 18, 19, 20. I'm fresh out of college. No. 20, like 23, 24, 25, fresh out of college, grad school, exhausted, tired. and I'm running from my own mind, staying busy, but finding another class. But I wasn't when grad school classes was over, I put myself in doula classes. So now I'm working for it full time, and now I'm going to doula school. You know what I'm saying? Like always looking for something to fill my plate until I had to stop and say, nope, it's healing time. It's healing time. So that was my first moment of becoming aware that, okay, I'm running from me. And clearly there's some things that I'm hiding from myself. So I need to do the inner work. And that's when I started like taking my healing, my personal healing journey, because I was doing surface level healing, you know. Oh, you know, we got daddy issues. You know, daddy wasn't around. I gotta heal that. That's an obvious like healing thing that needs to go on. But then you got those deep down things that happen that really bothered you, that you really need to heal, that we're running from. That's that shadow work stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so that's when I realized that I needed to do some shadow work and really like mind my mental wellness, because honestly, I was scared. I was scared of becoming what I saw growing up. I never forgot the moment my auntie tried to burn down the house with the kids in it.
Yeah.
You know, I never forgot my mom's first major breakdown and going into the mental health hospital. I never forgot how she looked and what was going on and what was being said. I never forgot that. So I knew where it could go.
Right.
And I knew that I needed to do something before I got to that point. And just like Sierra, I didn't feel comfortable necessarily. I'm a person who I tell all my business, but I always feel like I have to overly explain things because I often feel like my situation is so unique, you know, and that's a part of what bonded me and Sierra, because we both could talk about our moms. You know, not often do you hear people say, well, I got mommy issues, you know, and me and Sierra was able to be like, girl, I got a few mommy issues. Oh, me too now. Me too now. You know, and it's not too often that you find people who can share in that. You know what I'm saying? Without looking. I remember multiple times of me wanting to talk about deep traumas and things I've been through, and the first thing people holler is, you know, well, you gotta. I don't care what your mama do. You gotta honor her. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, wait. What about how I feel?
Right.
You know, what about what's best for me?
Right.
Like, what about that? You know, so just again, similar to Sierra, like feeling like people won't fully understand and don't fully understand, so not really wanting to ask for help. And that's when I went on my healing journey and I started reading every book about shadow work and doing all the research and really like going to talk to folks, going to talk to, at the time, at my grad school, there was, I utilized the student health center and went and talked to the therapist lady. It was just open because I walked in and she was a little young white girl. And I was like, what this girl on? Well, let me just give her a chance. And I talked to her. Yeah, and she's actually the one who, like, you know, she listened. That was the first time I ever had someone not tell me to just deal with it. Just deal with it, you know. Oh, okay, you had this, you got these issues going on and you don't have contact with your mom. Oh, just deal with it. You just gotta move on, you know. Like that was the first time I didn't have somebody tell me just get over it, just move on, just let it go, you know. Someone who just sat and listened and validated my experiences and validated how I felt. So yeah, those are some of my signs and symptoms and a solution of how I move forward. So most recently, me and Sierra was talking, and she was about to get into it of her most recent experience with being alerted that, okay, I need extra support in my mental health. What did that look like, Cece?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, I would say that's when I started to, like you said, running from myself, when I was confronted with myself. Like we all were in some form of isolation. For me, I live alone, so I definitely wasn't around too many people at the time. So I felt like it was like, okay, you know, I'm kind of used to this anyway. But when you don't even get that social outlet at the time, where you just couldn't really go with your friends, or you couldn't go out to the movies, or you couldn't go here to the restaurant unless it had outdoor seating type of thing. So I found myself more isolated. And then it was also me making that choice for myself. Like even when things started to open up again, I still was saying, I don't even want to go outside. And that's, again, noticing different things about myself. Like what is making me not want to go outside? What's making me not want to be around people? And then knowing that my family doesn't live near me. So my family lives about 12 hours away. So it's not always so easy to go travel. So holidays were spent alone for at least 2020 and 2021. So last year around Thanksgiving, I decided that I wasn't going to go home, or I wasn't going to bother people and, show up and ask for a plate and, be introduced to everybody's auntie and uncle and stuff, and people inviting you over and you still just like, nah, I'm okay. You guys enjoy. I found myself, so that morning I went and I did a 5K for a turkey trot. And I was like, okay, I'm energized, I'm good. I ran this. And then by that evening, on social media, seeing people post their little paper plates and their food, you still want to experience that if you really want to. So I guess seeing all of that, and then I took a moment and said, okay, I'm just not going to look at social media right now. I'm going to find something else to do. If I'm not on social media and I'm not interacting with anybody else, again, I'm just here with myself, still trying to run away from myself still. So by that evening, I just found myself extremely emotional, just crying, not wanting to get out of the bed, at the point of not wanting to bathe, another sign as well. And then by that morning, I was like, okay, well, that was like, I think Black Friday. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get out, I'm going to do a little window shopping, maybe a little shopping, but a little window shopping for sure. And I'm going to get out, probably exercise, do something. And I literally was in bed probably for about 4 hours, just laying there crying, maybe not even straight, but on and off. So that day I was just like, okay, well, I really feel like I need to get some help. So I reached out to a friend just to find out, like, how their day was going, or just asking questions and realizing that they weren't in town. And then also just, in a sense, to me, it was random, but just saying, right now, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe being alone. I'm having these thoughts. I really don't feel comfortable being alone. So that friend just took it upon themselves to do a wellness check. And then that person wasn't in town, but an officer came and did a wellness check with me at my home. I immediately just started crying. I was going to initially think like, okay, how can I hide this? Again, running for myself. I was like, okay, I'm going to go through the wellness check. I'm going to answer all the questions. I'm going to be all right. There's nothing that's going to happen. And then the officer just asking me questions about how I'm feeling. And I'm just being honest. Like for the first time in a long time, really maybe in my life, I was just honest about how I was feeling. Somebody asking me, how are you? And actually telling them how I felt instead of, I'm okay. No, I feel like I should not be here alone by myself. And I don't want to go anywhere, but I just don't feel comfortable by myself. So the officer told me that I could go here and you can get help. So me not really knowing the full process, I didn't know that at that moment I was going to be hospitalized. So I was transported from my home to the hospital. It was within a police car, but that's the protocol for where the state I live in. So I went to the hospital. I did the check-in process. I was asked questions by a therapist, and then I was taken to a unit. And then that's when I realized, okay, I'm here, and I'm going to be here. Me thinking like, okay, I'm going to get some help. Somebody's going to help me. I'm going to be here probably like for 24 hours. By 24 hours hit and I got a chance to meet with a psychiatrist there, I realized I was going to be here a little bit longer than that based on the conversation that I had. But again, it was me being honest. In my mind, I was still trying to tell myself, Sierra, you can just say, you're okay. You had a bad day. You're all right. It's time to go home. I'm ready to go home, y'all. Okay. Somebody call my ride. Let's go. I'm ready to go.
JK.
Exactly. JK. Just kidding. See, I'm smiling, y'all. I'm smiling. I'm happy. I'm good. No, I was really just being honest about how I was feeling and just explaining everything that I've gone through in the last 2 to 3 years. And like you said, I think that's just so perfect about running from yourself. I was running from myself for like 3 years, just running from how I was feeling. So by the first day, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be on the unit. I'm just gonna try to make the best of it. And ultimately, I was there for 4 days. By the second day and a half, I was really emotional because again, I was stuck with myself. So I'm used to at least having my phone.
Okay, wait a second.
Right.
So I think this is important because what's happening right now,
Right.
is Sierra is sharing the moment that she went and got medical support.
Yes.
And oftentimes within our community, and this is the story that Sierra told me the other day that I was like, girl, can you talk about this?
Right.
Because I put up a video on my Instagram and I was just explaining that like I am not a holistic wellness practitioner who is anti-medication or anti-doctor. That is just simply not who I am. I believe in getting any form of support that you need to maintain and thrive in your wellness. And oftentimes in the Black community, we run from medical support, and it's understandable.
Right.
Okay, because as Black folks, our history with doctors and stuff is not well. We think about, Tuskegee and so many, Henrietta Lacks and so many stories historically of Black folks being mistreated, Black women dying during childbirth to this day. And we run and we don't trust doctors or we don't trust medication. But I truly believe in, again, getting all the support that you need. So when Sierra shared that, like, hey, sis, I went and got some medical support, I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
Like, please. First off, I'm proud of you and I'm glad that you did that, because oftentimes we try to natural remedy it. And we give herbs and we say go for a walk or go for a run. Right. And one thing I'll say about Sierra, I was talking about my self-discipline, how I'll tell myself, like, you can't have water, you can't, go pee unless you finish this paper. Sierra is also very disciplined, y'all. And she's very disciplined when it comes to the natural ways of taking care of ourselves mentally and physically. She's very disciplined in those ways. I watched Sierra, as you heard her say earlier, Sierra will run a 5K. And to me, that's admirable, because I ain't gonna run a 0.5K. Okay. I ain't ran a 0.5K. Sierra will run a 5K like it's nothing. Right. I be on her stories and sisters like, oh, 2 miles today. Sierra will take social media breaks. So it's not like, when she shared for the holidays, how, you go on Instagram and you see people place and stuff. One thing I've always admired about Sierra is that Sierra will literally disappear off the internet. And I'm like, is Sierra on the break? I'm sending her TikToks and memes. I'm like, she's not responding. Right. She's on another break. But I know a lot of folks who say, I'm going to go on a social media break and I'm doing 30 days no social media. And in 3 days, I see them watching stories. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So Sierra's level of discipline to be able to take these long breaks and, she's physically fit and she goes and she works out and she eats well and she takes care of herself. She does the natural things, but sometimes we need more support. Sometimes those herbs ain't enough. That yoga class ain't enough. That jog ain't enough. That social media break may not be enough. Sometimes you may need extra support. And it started with, as she keeps saying over and over and over, and I really hope that y'all hear this, what she keeps saying over and over and over is it started with me being honest. I was just being honest. I called a friend and I was honest about how I felt. Right. I was honest. The officer came to do the wellness check. I was honest about how I felt. He gave me an option of different hospitals to go to, took her to a facility. She went there, talked to the psychiatrist. She was honest. So at some point, we have to be honest with ourselves and with ourselves first and realize I need more help. This tea ain't cutting it. This jog ain't cutting it. This isolation ain't cutting it. I need more. So when you went and you got more support, Sierra, what was that experience of, because I believe you were in a behavioral health facility, right?
Yes.
So what was that experience? So the first 24 hours you talked to the psychiatrist, and then day 2, when did you realize, like, okay, we're here?
They did by day 2, I realized it. I mean, even and it was just I was being honest, but I was also at the same time not wanting to be there. You know, you want to be in your own bed. You're in a hospital bed with a thin mattress, a little thin pillow, they give you a little blanket, all things to keep yourself protected. But and then also, not having my skincare stuff, not using my electric
Gotta keep this
toothbrush, girl.
skin.
That's why I said by day 2, I realized it was hitting me because I'm not experiencing everything that I would usually experience. But after I kind of got over that in a sense, just realizing that I'm here for a bigger purpose. And then they start the day pretty early. I believe like around 5:30, 6 a.m. Someone's coming in, doing your vitals and checking in on you. And there was always somebody checking in throughout the night as well. So by the next morning, they did all that, went to breakfast. First thing we do is group. One of the group facilitators, I'll never forget, just her whole, just everything she was talking about just made me feel like, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. Like the questions that were being asked, the different things that we were discussing. And I was like, okay, I'm again being honest with how I'm feeling because they're asking you, okay, everybody, on a scale of 1 to 10, how is everybody feeling? And we're going around in a group giving a number. And if you want to elaborate on why you are at that number, you can. Again, just being in those spaces where you can feel honest.
So okay, so can you describe, because a lot of people have never experienced
Oh
being
yeah.
in a behavioral health facility. So can you describe the group a little bit? In the group, I know you can't share in detail,
Oh
but
yeah.
in the group, is the group ran by one psychiatrist and then it's just everyone who needs support, or are there multiple help people? Like, how does that look?
Yeah. So I would say there are so within the unit, individuals as far as patients, it was probably maybe 15 of us on one unit. There was one psychiatrist that was working because also keep in mind this was a holiday weekend. This was Thanksgiving weekend. So
Mm,
I believe the psychiatrist that usually works this unit was off. So that psychiatrist was available. There was a therapist. There was 2 therapists that would meet with people throughout the day. There was a med tech who also facilitated some groups. Then there was other therapists that came in that facilitated the groups throughout the day. And then there's a nurse's station. So there's people that are getting their medication. There's people that are there to check in with you if you have questions. So it wasn't like you were in your room all day. It actually was a very, at least for where I went, it was a very interactive process. Like there was always someone around you. They encourage people to not be in their room during the day and to go to group. For some people that were on medication, maybe that's a little more challenging because if you feel a little drowsy or just, you want to be in your room for that moment, you want to take that time for yourself, you just let somebody know and they'll be accommodating. So it was like a full wraparound experience. I was
mm.
surprised that men and women were on the unit together, but based on what they deemed as my diagnosis, that's just where I fell in line. But there's staff everywhere. So there's somebody always in a room checking and things like that.
Okay, so I do want to ask 2 questions, and you can share as much or as little as you want to. So you
Right.
mentioned, based on my diagnosis, what was the process of you getting diagnosed? And at any point, did they try to force medication on you?
So not until I met with a psychiatrist. So during the admission process, I did meet with a therapist that asked me questions, mainly from an assessment, from what I could see, it was like yes or no type of questions. But meeting with the psychiatrist, that's when he at the end determined that it sounds like you have depression. So that's the conversation that I had with him, and that's when it came down to the diagnosis that I was given. And for medication, he would recommend medication, but ultimately it was my decision that I didn't want to take medication. I've never been on medication. And honestly, for me, it was something where I wanted to try this out alone without medication. I wanted to take the opportunity to utilize the therapy services, all the things that were on the unit before I just jumped into medication. That was just something that I made as a personal choice because me, I like to do a little bit of research. I want to know the side effects before I just actually just take that. And I didn't have that opportunity. I didn't have the internet access. So I declined it and they were like, okay. No one ever physically said, hey, here you go. I'm like, no, nobody ever did that. So that was actually another reason why I just still felt like I was where I needed to be.
And CC, that's. I'm actually probably going to clip this part out and put it in the beginning, because
Okay.
if people don't even finish the whole video, This is what I want them to take away.
Right. Yeah.
It is okay to go get medical support and know that you have your rights when getting medical support.
Exactly.
Oftentimes in the movies and stuff, they portray, you get put in a mental hospital and they strap you down to a gurney and they
Right.
inject you with something that's
Yeah.
gonna put you to sleep and you wake up and you're out of it. And
Exactly.
that's not always what it is. And for
Right.
most people, that is not their personal experience. You can go get medical support, you can take assessments, you can sit down with therapists and psychologists, and you actually and psychiatrists as well, and get an
Right.
idea of actually what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
She received the diagnosis. It sounds like you have depression. They offer you medication options, but it's optional. She declined it and said, I just want to try out the therapy services and see how that works, because for us as Black folks, a lot of us don't have access to a team of therapists. So she wanted to utilize the resources. They gave her the option of medication, but she
Mm-hmm.
was able to opt out of medication. So if
Right.
anyone is watching this video right now and you feel like you need help of any sort for any reason,
Right.
please do not be afraid or let your hesitation involve, I don't want to be drugged up. I don't want them to force me on medication, because that is not always the experience.
Exactly. That's really important to know, because I know a lot of people, even mentioning going into a behavioral health hospital, you could assume, oh, they drugged you up, you had to take medication. No, like you said, you still have rights, and you can opt out from those things. I know there are circumstances where medication is needed for certain individuals based on what they're experiencing, but for me, I definitely had a choice for sure.
I love that. Okay, so in a day when you're at the behavioral health hospital, or is it behavioral health center or hospital?
Behavioral health hospital. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you're at the behavioral health hospital, you wake up in the morning, you have breakfast, and then y'all go to group
Yeah.
right after.
Mm-hmm.
And when y'all are in group, you mentioned like y'all are in a circle and everybody shares how they feel and you give
Right.
a number. So what does group look like? Like what is a therapy a group therapy session versus a one-to-one therapy session when you're at the behavioral health hospital?
Yeah. So with the group session, so everyone, there was like I guess you can call it like maybe a TV room, because there was a TV. That's another thing too. There was a TV on the unit. So we would all be in that room. You can sit close to someone, you can sit separate from someone, but there's enough space to spread out. We would all get worksheets. You get a pencil, you get to, fill out the form. So each person facilitating the group would ask you just different questions about how you're feeling. That's just how we would start each group, because everyone's, checking in with you, and then just have a discussion. It would probably be maybe about 45 minutes, and then you would have some alone time, so you can either go into the quiet room. So it was a quiet room where people are maybe reading, maybe doing some adult coloring, and then you also have access to the TV. So there were some people that would just figure out where they were going, what they were going to do, and then another group session would start. And then it would kind of be the same way. And then in between the group sessions, different people would be called to speak with another therapist individually. So you have
Okay.
that opportunity as well. Just because there's so many people on the unit, they just have to spread out the time. So throughout the day, you're either maybe getting a chance to meet with a therapist one-on-one, or you're having an opportunity to attend group. And then you're getting 3 meals a day, on the specific time every single day. And then there would be about 45 minutes of going outside. So there would be an area that we would all go to, and just sit outside and then go back upstairs. You have access to the phone. So that was something that I didn't think I would have access to. But of course, these days you don't really remember numbers, but if you can, you can actually dial out to a number or someone that knows that you're there. They have to know a little more identification to confirm that you're there for HIPAA reasons. You can't just call up and say, hey, see, you're there. They can't really just confirm
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, throughout the day, I was just doing different things. And then also just, again, not running for myself anymore. Like I would have to, when it was quiet time, either I'm going to sit and watch whatever's on the TV with everybody else, or I'm going to go in the quiet room, maybe write. That was something else. Everybody was given a journal. So you can write throughout the day. You can, if you want to read, there was an area for books and things like that. So it was so many moments where If I wasn't there, I would probably be at home on my phone or watching something on TV, really avoiding myself, avoiding what I'm going
Mm.
through. So in that moment, I had to really just take the time to say, okay, I'm going to really get this experience and get the help that I need and take full advantage of everything that I'm getting right now.
Of everything that's going on. So, Cece, when you talked about, like receiving the group therapy support, the one-to-one sessions, when you were in these one-to-one sessions, did you feel like you were able, I know you talked about how your feelings were validated in the one-to-one sessions, but did you feel like you were able to get solutions that you can utilize with moving forward?
Yes. So within those meetings, the one-to-one meetings, since the ultimate goal is for me to be discharged, I would discuss my safety plan. So what would it look like when I go home? Am I going to go back to just laying in bed for a certain amount of time and not getting out or crying, or am I going to do something different? So within the one-on-one sessions, I would discuss how I was feeling, but then I would also get asked with the question, so what are you going to do differently when this happens, or when you're feeling like this, or what support do you have in place? And then actually giving names for individuals. Like if a friend, because I live alone, so my safety plan would include somebody staying with me at least for up to 3 days when I'm released. Um, so giving a name for someone and anyone else that I would call while I was there that I could check in with. That was another thing that they would ask, because they definitely don't want me to speak with somebody that could be a trigger for me. Like, is this someone that's supportive to you that you can talk to? Or even knowing that I have to go back to work. So you're not going straight back to work. Like that wouldn't be recommended just based on what you're experiencing and your level of stress. So being okay with that one, getting a note, that was something they were talking about, that will give you a note for your employer. If you are interested in seeking medication, these are our recommendations that you can look into. And then also the hospital provided more group therapy upon my release. So that was something that I was required to do, that I would do group sessions 3 times a week. And then I would get back to meeting with the therapist, because I was meeting with the therapist virtually like every other week, maybe sometimes once a month, just not as consistent. So that was something that was a part of my plan as well. Just looking into what am I going to do differently when I'm released from here.
I like that. See, that's something I wasn't aware of. So,
Mhm.
when you left, they provided you with group therapy options, and were
Yes.
they free?
Well, it was a part of my insurance, so that is something
Hmm.
else that I guess should be noted, that when you do decide to do this, if it's something that you want to do, that insurance is important to consider. But for at least the group programs, I know they did discuss with me either payment plans or maybe if things can be waived. So they gave me some options. I guess if you
Mm.
are in a hospital, it's just like if you were in any other hospital, if you go to the ER, you more than likely will be billed. But for the services provided after, those are things that were provided to me to keep me, well, of course, not going back unless I need to, but also to give me that support instead of just saying, okay, here's your discharge papers. Hope we don't see you again, type of thing. But definitely to provide me with that extra support. And then I already was meeting with the therapist. So they just encouraged me to get back into those sessions. Like, when you talk about your 5 senses, that was something that I learned in therapy about what in this moment can I control? What in this moment can I feel? Like I can see the screen, I can taste what I had for lunch, I can hear the air conditioner, my feet are on the ground, I can touch, I can smell different things that I can control in this moment. It's something I'm always going to remember. And that's something that they gave me as far as notes to keep with me. Like in a moment where you are feeling stressed and you're feeling anxious, what can you control in that moment? So I always felt like I had
Mm.
some form of resources to go back to. Because maybe if by chance I tell myself I don't need therapy anymore, I'm just going to utilize these resources. And at least I have that if I'm not going to continue with some type of therapeutic resources.
Okay. I love that. I love that, because again, there's so many people out here who really need extra support, and they have all these fears and hesitations, and they don't know if it'll work, and they don't know if it's for them. And I really appreciate you sharing so openly about your experience, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about multiple times of various people in my life who this would have been a great option for them. You know, this would have been, I'm thinking about like family members who I know who have had children and they pick up the phone and they call me and they're like, I feel like I'm about to kill these kids. Da, da, da. And I left the house and I left the kids in the house. And I have a family member who literally like left her young children in the house and got in a car and just drove because she was having thoughts, thoughts of, you know, hurting herself and the children. Like we all just don't need to be here anymore. And I'm trying to talk her through it and like help her through it. And then I'm also trying to click on the other line and check on the kids because the kids was little. And you know, there was so much happening. And I just sit here talking, I'm like, wow, this would have been a great option. Like as the friend who's receiving that phone call, in hindsight, I wish I would have called 911 and just like your friend did and had them do a wellness check instead of trying to do it on my own. Because even if at the end of the phone call, everything worked out and she went back home and I stayed on the phone with her until she got the kids to bed and she went to sleep and, you know, she got up the next day and went to work. But a more long-term solution would have been better. You know, in a moment like that, she needed more support. In a moment like that, not having to go to work the next day would have been better. In a moment like that, a therapy session and a group therapy session and like I'm thinking to myself like, man, I should have probably called 911 and had them do a wellness check. So for anybody who is watching this, who is the person on the other line that receives the phone call, don't feel hesitant or feel like you're not loyal or you're doing something wrong if you send 911 to do that wellness check. If you receive that phone call and somebody is close to or has reached their breaking point and you think like, okay, maybe I should call 911, if the thought even crosses your mind, just call them. Just call them because you don't want to not call and things don't go well. You know, something that Sierra and I was talking about was Chesley Chris. Chesley Chris. And I'm going to put the beautiful Queen's photo up so that we can put a face to her name. But I was watching the Red Table Talk with her parents and how this was a young sister who she really desperately needed some support. She had been suffering in silence for so long. And just like Sierra talked about, and I talked about how oftentimes, you know, you'll just say like, I'm okay, I'm all right, you know, because you don't feel like people are capable of supporting you in the way that you need. And you don't want to be a burden on anybody. So you suffer in silence. And what I learned from the Red Table Talk with her parents, they on the Red Table Talk, if you have time to watch it, well, Chesley Chris' parents, they shared her final text message, which was basically her suicide note. And the message starts out with, by the time you read this, I'll no longer be here. And then she goes on to explain how she's been feeling all of these years and why she never said anything and why she never asked for support and all this stuff. So, you know, if anybody out there is feeling like they're on the other side of the phone and they don't want to ask somebody for support, they are not yet ready to be honest about how they feel, honest about what they're thinking, just know that there are support options out here, because what we don't want are any more death by suicide. And Sierra, if you can explain the difference of the language, because Sierra taught me the language of death by suicide versus committed suicide.
Right. So I did make a social media post about that because I have learned that through my work. I do work within mental health as well. And I've learned that someone saying that they committed suicide is in a sense of like saying someone committed a murder, someone committed manslaughter, thinking of it more on a level of crime. I'm not too familiar with the history of suicide, but I do believe at some point it was looked at as a crime. You dying by suicide, you're taking your life in a sense of murdering someone, murdering yourself. So the verbiage is changing, or should be changing, to death by suicide or died by suicide, in the sense of just explaining how that person's death occurred, versus thinking about how they, of course, in a sense, took their life, but putting it more in a context of that this situation is very sensitive. So it's not just to say that someone, kill themselves or things like that, more so explaining the level of severity and how it got to that point that someone decided to take their life. So they died by suicide versus committed suicide.
Okay. And I think out of perspective, it's very important to note that because this young sister, and in the eyes of the world, she had everything going on. She's young, she's a lawyer, she was Miss, I believe she won Miss USA.
Yeah.
Okay, so she won Miss USA, successful, beautiful, gorgeous, all these things going on. She's on TV and she's doing all these amazing things. And when it happened, when she died by suicide and the news was put out there, I remember everyone being so like incredulous and like, it's no way. No way, this is a murder. Somebody pushed her. There's no way. And her parents had to say, no, you guys, like, she left a note.
Yeah.
This is real. Because oftentimes we see people do well. They look well on the outside. They're successful. They have, they're societally successful. They have the looks. They have the career, they have the money, they may have the relationship, the man, the woman, the spouse, they may have the kids, the big, beautiful house or whatever, and really inside they're suffering. And they don't know how to ask for help. They don't know how to ask for support. They may not yet ready to be honest about how they feel. And they just suffer and suffer and suffer until eventually they don't want to suffer anymore. The other young lady who recently, I believe she was a cheerleader at Southern, Orlando Miller, she recently, she put up a post on Facebook before she died by suicide. And she explained how she was feeling. And by the time she was ready to fully open up and fully be honest and fully share, she was already at this solution. The solution I'm choosing is suicide. And that's it. So we don't want anybody to get to that point. We don't want anybody to get to the point where the moment that they're ready to be honest and share how they feel is the moment is coupled with the moment that they're ready to, no longer be here.
Yeah.
So our intention for this video again is just to explain that yes, there are natural remedies. Yes, like Sierra, you can go run the 5K, and you can take the social media breaks. And like for me, you can make yourself super busy and, you can take the extra classes and, all this stuff and do all these and read 1,000 books and all this stuff. But you may need more. You may need more. You may need more support. And it's okay to get that medical support. And Sierra, I appreciate you so much for opening up about your experience because, when people talk about, being placed, when I was young, we used to say, such and such got placed on 72 hour hold. Yeah. And I believe in some areas it's called being Baker's acted, right?
Yeah.
So when we would talk about someone being Baker's acted or being placed on a 72-hour hold or just having to go to get mental health support, it was like a hush hush thing. Don't tell anybody. So you didn't know what it looked like on the inside. You didn't know what it looked like on the other side. And when they would come home, it's like nobody wants to trigger them, so nobody wants to talk about it. You don't want to ask them any questions because you don't want to trigger any feelings. So don't ask any questions. So even though my mother had one a few times and, we never asked like what happened behind the closed doors because we didn't want to trigger anything. So Sierra, I deeply appreciate you sharing this experience because I'm pretty sure there is somebody out here who's watching this video who they would love the support that you described. They would love the opportunity just to have a few days where they can receive that group therapy support in those one-to-one sessions and actually have someone listen and assess and give a diagnosis, someone offer options of medication, but give them the option and it be okay. And you can try the therapy with the medication or without the medication. You can get the support. And then you talked about your at home transition, that they sent you home with a safety plan. And that safety plan not only included group therapy sessions and one-to-one therapy sessions, but that safety plan also included grounding work. Like what she described, being knowing what you can control in a moment of, okay, what do you see? What do you smell? What do you feel? That's grounding exercises. So they're also offering natural remedies that you can try that you may not have been implementing, you may not have been aware of. So please, if you feel the need to get support, know that you can get medical support and it still have the holistic vibe and it still have the natural vibe to it, but it's just extra support. It's just extra help. And much love to Chesley Chris, much love to Arlana Miller, and anyone else out there who died by suicide, family, friends, relatives. We send love, we send light, we send condolences because that is not easy, for anyone. Oftentimes you're left feeling like, what more could we have done? How did I not see the signs? How did I not see the symptoms? I even for myself shared how I've received those phone calls from people at their breaking point, and I try to work through it with them. But I'm literally sitting here playing in my mind of, I wish I would have did the 911 wellness check, because I wish I would have help them get that support. Like people need those group sessions. They need that one-to-one session. They need more than just their homegirl or their holistic wellness practitioner talking them through the moment. They need long-term support. So again, if you are the person who receives the call, don't be afraid to make the call. Right. Don't be afraid to call 911. And I personally advise that okay, girl, yes, and click over 911. Hey, I need a wellness checker, right. such and such and such and such. Click back over. Hey, girl, yeah, child. Yeah. And you stay on the phone with them until 911 shows up. Right. And get them that support they need. So, Sierra, are there any final thoughts that you want to share? Anything else that you want to share about your experience, about mental health, or anything like that?
Yeah, I would say encouraging individuals to get help, but if you are a little hesitant about that process, you can call, if you want to search like a non-emergency number. So if you have the time, or if it's like the situation has just progressed and you don't have the time, definitely call 911. But if you do have the time, find out your local police station and find a non-emergency number and ask for a crisis intervention officer. So there are officers that are trained to handle these specific situations. And if you don't want an officer coming and you feel like this may be not the best person to confront your friend or family member, you can ask for someone that has been trained to assist someone in these specific situations, because that's something that has become more prevalent to provide that training, because there's some officers that are just not handling these situations well at all. So specifically asking for that is very helpful, just so that who's coming out to do the wellness check is aware of the situation. So it's not an emergency, so that's clearly letting them know that it's not an emergency. For example, maybe something more severe happening, but having an officer come that's trained that can ask those specific questions. So I could tell the officer that was asking me questions, this sounds like something that he's been trained in, and he actually took advantage of that training and he's utilizing it based on the questions that he's asking me. He's not confronting me. He's not directly in my face. I wasn't handcuffed. There was nothing like that happened. I know every situation is different, but I don't want anybody to be scared or feel like they don't want to do it because we're mentioning officers and we're mentioning law enforcement. In some states, it just varies, but within the state I live in, there are specific individuals that are able to say that this person is in danger to themselves or they're in danger to someone else. So that I definitely want everyone not to be discouraged because of that. So just knowing that, like, getting help, I know there's some things on the outside that may make you feel like you don't want to do it, but there are ways to definitely get help in the best way. And then the other thing that I would just like to mention, like, I've felt, and sometimes I do honestly feel like I could be a burden to people when I mention about how I'm feeling, because I'm still going through different things, but I'm also utilizing the resources that I received while I was in the hospital and then taking advantage of those one-on-one sessions that I have with the therapist. But I don't want anyone to feel like they're a burden to anybody else, because that's how I felt. Even in the moment asking my friend, like, I'm not feeling like myself and knowing she's out of town with her family. Like this is the worst time to say this to somebody, but appreciating that she took the time to make sure that I was okay. And I mean, if the people that are around you that make you feel like a burden definitely shouldn't be the people that you should be around at all. You're the people that you definitely socialize with and feel comfortable with sharing should make you feel safe. In that moment, I felt safe enough to share with that friend how I was feeling. So definitely don't feel like you're a burden to anybody. You definitely can get the help that you need and definitely be around people that can support you throughout that process because it's going to be a continuous journey.
A continuous journey, a continuous journey. And I'm glad that you touched on that because I wanted to end with discussing what does that continuous journey look like for you now that you've had this experience of, going to the behavioral health hospital, receiving the support, and you mentioned that, that doesn't mean that everything is just perfectly fine and I'm
Right, no.
great, like,
Right, yeah,
it's
exactly.
a continuous journey. So,
Yeah.
what does that continuous journey look like for you now?
For me now, I'm not just basing my wellness on like the things you mentioned as far as like exercise. Like I'm like, if I go run today, I'm gonna be good for the rest of the day. No, there are some other things that I need to put in place. So for me, that's also utilizing things that make me feel good. Like definitely when you do exercise, those are things that make you feel good. The things that you eat, the things that you take into your body are all part of your overall wellness. But I'm also journaling. I'm also taking that extra time in the morning to get myself together before I go into work. So I'm not waiting like I used to 30 minutes before I actually have to go in to get ready. I'm giving myself enough time to get ready in the morning and go into bed at a decent time so I can get up in the morning. Like being okay with shutting off my phone or putting my phone on do not disturb or setting a time that when my phone goes down at this time, I may not get messages until the morning, and that's okay because this is my downtime. Actually, being okay with having my time is something that I definitely had to grow into. Like, I want to be accessible to my family, I want to be accessible to my friends. No, there are moments where you just need to have your own time. So, utilizing that and then getting in a healthy routine. I know you talked about your routine about how you just kept going and going and going and busy, busy, busy. But for me, I had to get a healthy routine. Like I had to say, okay, I may not wake up every single day at this time to go work out. Some days I may just sleep in a little bit extra, still giving myself time to get ready for work. But also after work, I'm not gonna go run and do these errands. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna relax. I'm gonna turn on one of my shows or something, or go for a walk. Just giving myself that freedom and that time to have nothing to do. It's okay. Like you don't have to have everything on your schedule all the time. It's something that I had to learn because I was the same way. Like, okay, I got to do this after work. I got to do that. Okay, on the weekends I got to do this. I'm getting up at 4 because I got to do that. Like, same exact thing. But now it's like, okay, I have some time, but in a healthy way. And then also, therapy definitely is something that I know for me personally, I had to continue because, like you said, people calling you and sharing these things at the level of understanding, you can only give so much help to someone. So, someone that is a licensed professional can help you in these different situations. Someone that is okay with me just dumping everything. Like, it doesn't matter what it was, they want to hear about it. So, that's something that I had to find a healthy way to incorporate. And then being okay with telling people that I'm okay. Again, keeping that level of honesty. If it's somebody that I know I can't really share that type of information with, then I'll, go from there. But somebody that I feel safe around, somebody that's in my, sister circle, people that I look up to, and I can actually share that and be okay with it and knowing like however they react, I can't control that, but I can just control what I say in the moment is something that I'm working on as well. And then also for me, social media breaks just remind me to not run from myself because that's what I was doing. And sometimes I personally can just be in a social media wormhole. You just keep going, 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 and looking at stuff, and then feeling like you need to look into somebody else's life and what they have going on versus dealing with what you had going on that day. Because that's what I used to do. Like, okay, let me go see, what so and so is doing and see what they did today versus, okay, let me check in with myself first. And then if I feel comfortable, doing that today, just giving myself an option, not always doing that just because I want to just get my mind, keep away from my mind type of thing. Yeah.
Okay, I love that. I love that. You know, there's so many different tools that you are utilizing. I feel like you just threw
Right.
out like a plethora, like a
Yeah.
cloud. And I'm hoping that anybody who is listening is like, oh, I could do that.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
I could
yeah,
do that.
yeah.
Oh, I could do that. I could do that one. I don't even know if you realize how you just explained therapy support and medical support, but also natural solutions and natural remedies
Right.
and
Yeah.
holistic things that you can do. And mental wellness breaks. And yes, I can eat well, and working out works for me. Do what makes you feel good. And, get, if you can, get therapy if you can, but
Mhm.
also, taking social media breaks and this, all of those are solutions. All
Mhm.
of those are forms of support. All of those are forms of help. Utilize what you can. Try it. Just give it a chance.
Yeah.
But the first step is you have to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
That's the first step. The first step is realizing that you need the support. You need something extra. The
Yeah.
first step is realizing I have a mental body, I have a mental space, and there's a such thing as having a healthy and an unhealthy being in an unhealthy or healthy mental space. And you have to realize in the moment that, like, right now, I may not be in the healthiest mental space.
Right.
And this is how I know. What are some of those signs and symptoms for you? How have you been feeling, honestly? Check
Mhm.
on yourself. Even if you don't feel comfortable sharing with anybody else, in this moment, check on yourself. How
Right.
have you been feeling
Mhm.
mentally? Is there anything within yourself that you may be running from? Does any of this sound familiar? Staying super busy, extreme isolation, not
Mhm.
having the desire to get up and do anything, not wanting to face the challenges of life, not finding joy in anything or being enthused by anything, feeling very mundane, feeling very melancholy or very aloof about things,
Mhm.
um, not being interested in participating in life. If
Mhm.
you are feeling any of these ways, that's a sign that you may need some extra support.
Mhm.
Utilize what you can, but don't be afraid to take that next step and go get some medical support if you need it. As you just heard Sierra explain and share, it ain't what they show in the movies all the time.
Right.
It's not what they may show on TV all the time. I remember that episode of Martin. I don't know if you remember her. Remember Pam had that cousin that had got released from the mental hospital, and
Oh,
she,
yeah, I do.
like that scene just popped in my head, and it's crazy because
Yeah.
those are the images of going to a mental health hospital or behavioral health hospital. And getting support. Those are the images that we receive. I think about Good Burger. Remember the scene in Good Burger?
Exactly. Yeah. When it was in there, they said they was getting it though. But
you know,
they,
like those are the images
yeah.
that we receive. It's the
Yeah.
extreme, again, somebody being forced on a gurney and injected with medication and being in a padded room and
Right.
all of this and the door slammed shut.
Mhm.
Like that's not what it is. So
Yeah.
go receive that support if you need it. And
Mhm.
again, if you are on the other side of that phone call and you know that someone needs that support, don't be afraid to have them do that wellness check or utilize the resources that Sierra shared,
Yeah.
and having an officer come out who is trained specifically in this area, and just sending them extra support that you may not necessarily be able to provide. So
Mhm.
I hope that this video was helpful, family. I hope that you enjoyed. Sierra, thank you so
Mhm.
much for just sharing and being
Yes.
open and all of that good stuff. It was so much useful information, and I appreciate
Yeah.
you endlessly, friend. I appreciate
Thank
you,
you. I appreciate
girl.
you too.
Thank y'all
Yeah.
so much for watching. I love y'all and
Bye.